The Endless Golf Podcast, brought to you by Toyota.
And welcome into another edition of the Endless Golf Podcast presented by Toyota. Joining me from Drew's Morning Diss is Drew Forrester. And Drew, it's great to have you back on the podcast. And we're going to talk a little bit golf today, as we always do. When you joined me last year, Drew, we talked a little bit about your career, but more this year, we'll talk about the tour, what's happening with LIV, and really what's happening in the world of golf. Great to see you. And first, before we get started, what's happening new in your world?
Well, I have a puppy in my house, by the way, barking, so I apologize for that. Hadn't barked in an hour, and now all of a sudden it's starting to bark.
That's the way it always works.
Everything is great. I just turned 61, so now I'm definitely golf-wise. I feel like I still have a lot of good golf left, but I'm definitely on the back nine of my golf career. But I'm excited for the season. I didn't have a great year last year. I did play well in some spots. I really played well. Ironically, I probably played better last year in the U.S. Senior Open qualifier. I went to a new place up near Pittsburgh called Indiana Country Club. Got there early, looked at the golf course, loved it, thought I could play it well. I played better tee to green last year than when I got into the U.S. Senior Open at Argyle a few years ago. I just didn't make any putts. And it's kind of all about that. The day at Argyle, when I got in, I made everything. And I didn't make anything last year, but I hit the ball really, really nicely. It was probably my best one-day performance of the season. Just didn't make any putts. So I am going to go back there, I think. They have the qualifier again there, and I'm going to go back. I think, as I've said to a lot of people, and I know you and I have talked before, I think those USGA events are all about finding the right place to qualify. If you find someplace that you like, and I was never adverse to Argyle. I had never played Argyle particularly well before I got in. It just worked in my schedule well that day. But I'm a really big believer. If you're a golfer, you're listening right now, and you're somebody who wants to play in USGA events, one of the keys is to find a place, qualifying place that fits your golf game. That is, I can't stress enough how important that is. So maybe I found one up there. I don't know. It's a long way away, but it was a good golf course for me.
Absolutely. For those who don't know, Drew qualified for the Senior U.S. Open back in 2021, played at Omaha Country Club in Nebraska, and what a great experience that was. We kind of talked about that the last time you were on. But you're right, Drew. It's horses for courses. You know, it's amazing when you play a golf course. I think the average golfer can definitely relate to what you're saying, because you know, you get to a certain golf course and you just have so much more confidence. And you know how important confidence is in this game. It's a hard game, but when you step on that first tee, or if there's 4 or 5 or 6 holes that are getting your head, you know, a golf course can play very difficult. But if you're comfortable on most of the tee boxes, you're probably going to play pretty well.
Well, you're exactly right. And I think that for me, as I look at golf courses and I assess them for my own game and knowing what I do well and don't do well, part of that is what I discuss with my golf team all the time. As a player, you have to really be able to have an honest conversation with yourself about what you do well and what you don't do well. And if you can't have that kind of honest conversation with yourself, you're always going to cheat yourself out of success somehow. And so I look for places that fit my game well. I'm not overly long. So when I see a golf course that's 67, 6,800, 66, somewhere in that range, right away, now that's my first step. Like, I'm attracted to that. If it's when I went to Omaha and I saw 7,300 yards first Saturday, I'm like, oh boy, this is not going to be good. But you got to find that place, and then part of it is which way do you play the ball? Do you play the ball right to left? Do you play it left to right? Are you someone? I'm somebody who grew up playing a lot of golf at Mount Pleasant. I've always putted from around the greens. Therefore, I'm very good at that. I am not a great chipper of the golf ball. I never have been.
I can certainly relate to that.
So I look at places, and the funniest part is Omaha was a really good fit for me for that. Omaha had a lot of run up in front of the greens. I was able to putt the ball from various places around the greens. It did not require you to be a great chipper, which, funny enough, the guy that won, Jim Furyk, has never been a great chipper of the golf ball. So it fit me that way, other than the fact that it was really long and hard. But I do look for places that fit my eye, and you said the best word, which is confidence. And I tell my kids at Calvert Hall all the time, like confidence, when you lose confidence, it's like an injury. It's exactly like an injury. It's just like hurting your wrist or your elbow or your foot. It takes you time to come back from that. So how do you come back from it? Well, the easiest way is don't lose it.
Right.
And if you don't lose it, then you don't have to worry. You know, it's the easiest way to treat an injured wrist is don't injure it in the first place. So
yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it is.
right.
Confidence is it's so important in this game, and you
No
know
doubt.
you know when you hit bad shots, it's it's obviously you try to go on to the next shot. You try not to think about the last shot, but it's very difficult to do that. It can definitely get in your head, and if you can keep that and kind of block the negative stuff out, and you definitely will play the game better. And when you lose confidence, you start thinking about where not to hit it instead of where to hit it. And I think that's the biggest factor. You get to a hole, there's water on the right-hand side or whatever, or don't hit it out of bounds. When the thoughts like that creep in your head, you're dead.
Right. And I think that's a great point. And I think you said something too that's interesting, and that is and I say this all the time, not only to myself, but to the kids on my team. What are you expecting out of this shot that you're about to hit? What are you honestly expecting? And if you've got 252 yards of the hole and you've got to carry a creek in front of the green and you're trying to hit the ball, we have this hole in Hunt Valley. We play Loyola every year at Hunt Valley, and the 11th hole at Hunt Valley, which is a great hole, is a par 5 that's got a stream in front of it. And I always say to my kids on my team before we play, you have to be respectful of that hole, because you're going to stand out there with 225 yards to the hole and think this is a 225-yard shot. And it is, but it's also a shot that if you only hit it 215 yards, you're making a 5 or 6 on an easy hole. So you have to ask yourself every shot, what am I expecting from this? Like realistically. And if you and I have 50 yards to the hole, we're realistically expecting it to be within 20 feet of the hole-ish, somewhere in there. But if we've got 200 yards to the hole, we're not expecting to hit it in there like that. So exactly. I've always found that to be useful for me as I evaluate, because we do this after every shot. Right away, we evaluate, was it a good shot? Was it a bad shot? Am I happy? Am I sad? You have to say to yourself before you hit the shot, what am I realistically expecting from this? And hit it. And then whatever happens, that you own it, and you move on to the next shot.
On the next one, you're right. Well, it's amazing, and we should say too, Drew is the coach of Calvert Hall, the high school golf team there, and you've been that way. I've been there for 12 years now.
This is I started in 2013, so I think this might be my 12th season. Very good, Bobby.
All right. Well, you're sharing your knowledge and your game with those kids, and I'm sure it helps them immensely for sure. Let's take a look now at the PGA Tour, and obviously a lot has changed in the game of golf over the last few years, Drew. And we saw an amateur win on tour for the first time in a long, long time, Nick Dunlap. Tell me your thoughts on that and how hard that is for a guy like that to compete. And you talk about confidence. You got to have some stone cold confidence to win on the PGA Tour if you're coming from Alabama and playing on the tour, for sure.
Well, you mentioned my high school kids, and I immediately started thinking about kids on my Calvert Hall team in 2021 who are now sophomores in college. And I thought, what would it be like if I were watching them win a PGA Tour event? Because Nick Dunlap he's not now because he turned pro, but he was a sophomore at Alabama. It's one of the greatest golf stories of our lifetime, for sure. I mean, it hadn't been done since 1991. And obviously Phil was a remarkable amateur and remarkable college player as well. You would think that this will jumpstart this kid's career. Will he be Phil Mickelson? Will he win 40 sometimes? Will he win 6 majors? I have no idea. But he beat a really nice field there. It was an interesting tournament for him because it was played on different golf courses too. Remember, it wasn't played at the same place. So that made it even more difficult. It wasn't like you were talking earlier about finding horses for courses. It wasn't like he just found a place that that dovetailed nicely with his golf game. He had to play 3 different places in those 4 days. So a remarkable story. And to make that putt, and I would say, hopefully you and I are doing this again in 5 or 10 years. It'll be very interesting to see what his career does, kind of based on that putt. if he misses that putt and then loses in a playoff, he's back at college this week. Everybody's, patting him on the back, telling him how great he did. His entire career changed.
His life changed. His life changed.
With that 6-foot putt. And funny, afterwards, he said he thought he had a 2-shot lead. He didn't even know where he stood. But like that making that putt, Dave Pels always said, I know you know Dave Pels, a lot of our viewers and listeners know, Dave Pels always says the first putt of the day the first makeable putt of the day determines your round. And that was what he always said. If you've got a 6-footer for par at the first hole and you make it, that kind of sets you up for the day. Well, it's interesting. Maybe that putt sets this kid up for his career. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, it really was fun to watch, and you got to take your hats off to him. And again, it's a life-changing moment for him, and we'll see where his career goes.
And he had to turn pro too. I think he didn't even. There was really no other option for him.
No, I mean,
there were plenty of reasons for him to stay amateur in terms of like legacy. Maybe he wins the Masters as an amateur. Maybe he wins the U.S. Open as an amateur. Who knows? But there was just too much. It's way too hard to get your card under normal circumstances.
Yes.
It's way too hard to get your tour card. And when it's given to you, and it wasn't given to him, but you know what I mean. When it's handed to you and someone says, hey, if you turn pro, you've got your PGA Tour card for the next 2.5 years, there's just no way you can't do it. You have to do it.
Well, that's a great transition to my next question. I want to live golf. Obviously golf has changed, and live has been a big part of what's changed in the game of golf. And, when live came on board, my thoughts was, I thought it would be a good thing. I thought the PGA Tour along with live would kind of figure out a way to coexist. Well, that didn't happen. Unfortunately, it kind of tore the game apart a little bit. I'm hating the fact that these guys are separated right now. I wish the guys would come back. I want to get your take on that, because I really think it's better if they're all one in some aspect. And, we've got a lot of good players playing on live now.
Well, I mean, I think you can break it down into 3 things. Number one, I think it's terrible for golf. I don't think there isn't really, we could debate it, but I don't think there's a debate about that. I don't think it's been good for golf at all. To have these events being played at the start of the season with no Brooks Koepka and no John Rahm and no, just keep naming them all, right? All the guys, Dustin Johnson, Patrick Reed, not having them around is not good for golf for me. Yeah. That's right out of the gate.
Agreed.
I agree with you in that I figured at some point they would be able to come together and work together and figure out a solution. And they kind of hinted at that last June, and they might have jumped the gun a little bit. And I don't know. I mean, I know they keep talking about there's going to be some kind of an agreement. It's sort of imminent, but I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means we're all just going to coexist again and everybody's going to play. And so I don't know. And then the third thing I think, to me, that's probably the most interesting is, why wouldn't they just have said from the beginning, we're going to play the PGA Tour from January until Labor Day when football starts, and maybe even say February until Labor Day, because we all know they're not going to beat football in this country. We just know that they're not, right? Why not start middle of January or right around now, play until Labor Day, football starts, let those guys all go play live. And if they want to go over to Europe and play, and go to Dubai and play, and go to Japan and play, in Australia, let them go. Like, I think the only rule I would say if I was the PGA Tour would be, you can't play golf tournaments here in this country when we're playing golf tournaments here. Like, we're just not going to let that fly. You're not going to go to Doral when we could be at Doral. But other than that, I didn't understand why you wanted to pigeonhole these guys into not playing over there in months that you're not playing. And we're not interested in playing golf here professionally in October, November, December, because we know we're competing with football. So that was what was weird to me. That's where I would think Monahan kind of missed the boat a little. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. If I can keep these guys on my tour, and if they want to go to Dubai in November and play, what do I care? That's the way I looked at it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a solution. It seems they've made it a little bit more complicated than it should be. And, I really do miss the guys that are playing on live, and I enjoy watching it, but I'm looking for the day where there's a solution to this, and it kind of comes back. And I'm glad the guys have been able to play in the majors. I think they've made a difference. Look at the Masters last year when Mickelson played great on Sunday, and it was exciting seeing him. Koepka was in the mix, and there's some talented guys over there, and you can't really fault them for taking the money. I mean, whether they want to admit or not, they had to take the money. In this sport, there's no guaranteed contracts. It's one of the only sports out there. I mean, where the only way you get paid is if you play well. And it really was kind of amazing to me. The lower guys, the guys that are trying to make the tour, they're trying to compete. They qualify maybe for an event. And I know you can relate to this. You take your caddy, you pay for your expenses. It's not cheap to play in a tournament. If you miss the cut, you would get nothing. Now the PGA Tour has kind of massaged that a little bit, paying some of the lower guys, or taking money from the top and trickling it down, which in any sport, if I've always felt like if you qualified for a tournament to play and you played for 2 days, you should get paid. Whether you make the cut or not, it's irrelevant, because there are expenses involved with that for sure. And you got guys borrowing money from their family. You got, friends giving these guys money. It's not easy to get on the tour. And it's very hard to stay on the tour as well. So I'm glad to see the tour has done some things with that. The other thing I would have liked to see over the years, being involved with a lot of PGA professionals, a lot of golf professionals at clubs, I felt like the tour could have done more for those guys, because as you know, Drew, the golf professional in the golf shop, that job is not what it was 20 years ago. They work a lot of hours. They don't get paid a lot of money. And the PGA Tour does make a lot of money. Then those are the guys that are teaching, they're growing the game, they're doing all those things. And to give back to the sections, I thought would have been a good PR move for the tour. I'm actually surprised Liv didn't do that, to try to get their brand a little bit better. But how tough it is at the golf course level for these local PGA professionals.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there. Let me say, from a personal standpoint, I don't want to make this up. This would never be a political discussion. I've always been opposed to the American players taking the money based on the connection between Saudi Arabia and 9/11, and we could talk about that for hours. And I don't want to get into it. I've always been opposed to them taking the money, but I also do understand your point, and it's very obvious that golf, you are an independent contractor for the most part in golf. You're not getting $50 million to play football, win or lose. You are making your own living. Sure, they sell their shirt and their hat and they got logos and all that. They're their own enterprise. It's one of the more interesting business dynamics, right? It would be like if the Ravens gave Lamar $1 million, but let him put Toyota on his sleeve. How much would Jay Pivik and Toyota pay to have Toyota on Lamar's sleeve, right? Lamar being an independent contractor. So I get it. I did it. I went down to Tampa in 2002 or 3 or whenever it was, when I was aspiring and looking at the senior tour when I was in my early 40s, and said, hey, let me go down there and see how it goes. And I spent $3,000 and I made 1,100. And I came home and said, got the lesson I needed right there, right?
Exactly.
I spent $3,000 in 3 weeks. I played in like 6 events and I cashed for $1,100 and said, okay, I'm going back home with my tail between my legs. So I totally get it. And I think, golf has evolved now where they're making so much money off the television, thanks to Tiger in some ways, but they've made so much money off of television, and they have so much of it to donate to charity, which is awesome, that it would be a good idea, as you mentioned, to figure out a way to funnel some of that back to the PGA Tour professional, even if it's $2,500 a year. Just even if it's a stipend, to just say, hey, we appreciate all the work you've done. Here's $2,500 for the year. That would be awesome.
I mean, even the section championships, they don't play for a lot of money. And some of the pro-ams that they're involved with, and these guys, and even if you look at the section championships, and this happened, I remember years ago, there's always 4 or 5 guys that are really good players. They have the advantage over the other guys because they're just not as good. And that's kind of the way it is on the PGA Tour. I mean, there's only so many Tiger Woods out there, and Phil Mickelsons and Brooks Koepkas. There's a lot more guys that play on tour that are out there trying to grind for a living. So, I think that the tour has missed on, in my opinion, they've missed on that over the years. And I hopefully, with this all coming to fruition. I hope things change a little bit in that aspect because, you know, in the sections and in the section championships and the pro-ams, they usually pay a pro for just showing up. So if they're doing it at the PGA golf professional level at the you know, in the sections, that's something the tour can, you know, maybe keep in mind, you know, as they move forward. But giving money to those sections would be a huge impact on these guys.
Yeah, and here's the thing too. I would say one of the more interesting developments I think you're going to see on the tour. You know, they're talking about announcing this alliance with this strategic sports group, which is the Red Sox owner and the Falcons owner, and a bunch of these billionaire guys are getting together and pouring a bunch of money into the PGA Tour. I think you're going to see the tour become a little bit like what NASCAR became 20 years ago. I think you're going to see 4 or 5 levels of the tour, just like they did with NASCAR. You had the big NASCAR boys, the Jeff Gordons of the world and all those guys. Then you had the Busch series underneath of them. Then you had the truck series underneath of them. And I think you're going to see the same thing on the tour. I think you're going to see the PGA Tour might only have the top 80 guys. Then the Korn Ferry or the next tier down might have the next 100 guys. Then you're going to have another group of college players and aspiring professionals, and there'll be 200 of them. And you're going to just go up level by level because there are thousands of Nick Dunlaps out there. I mean, thousands of kids who are I don't want to say as good as Nick Dunlap because he's the best amateur in the country, but there are thousands of college golfers who have great golf swings and can hit the ball a mile and can putt the lights out of it, and they just need a break and they need a place to play. And I think the tour would be really smart to create multiple levels for these kids to play in.
Well, that's a great thought. With that, let's take a quick break. We'll come back, talk a little Tiger Woods and about his move to TaylorMade and away from Nike and some other things, golf with Drew Forrester from Drew's Morning Disc. We'll be right back after this, so stay with us.
And now a word from our sponsor.
I love a good adventure, and my friends and family do too. So we all drive Toyotas. Tacomas for my rugged buds and Corollas for my city crew. And I drive a RAV4 that I take camping, shopping, and basically everywhere else. We all picked our Toyotas because they're reliable and efficient and have amazing resale value, saving us money now and down the road. So we can make every day an adventure. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals and inventory. Toyota, let's go places.
And welcome back to the Endless Golf Podcast presented by Toyota. With me this morning is Drew Forrester from Drew's Morning Dish. Drew, we talked about in our opening segment a little bit about the PGA Tour, talked about how tough the game of golf is. But one of the big things in golf right now is Tiger Woods is leaving Nike and headed for TaylorMade. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I don't know that he left. I think they told him it might be time for us to part company. I don't know what happened there. It would be interesting to know the inner workings of that deal, because why would you ever want to part company with Tiger Woods, right? Like, I would love to be able to know what really happened there. And I don't even know that it was adversarial, but I just can't believe Nike would allow someone like that to get away from them unless they needed to from a money standpoint. And maybe that's how it went down. I think the fact that Tiger is doing something like that with TaylorMade would tell me Tiger must feel like, and TaylorMade must be convinced, that he still has a lot of competitive golf left. And I don't know if that means 5 years or 10 years. Is Tiger going to go play on the senior tour? He'll turn 50 in 2025. I don't know. But I don't think TaylorMade would have made an investment in him if they wouldn't have had some assurance from Tiger that he was going to play. Certainly, he looked much better in December when we saw him playing in a couple of the tournaments. Physically, he looked a lot better. We're never going to know until we see him at the Genesis in February and we see him at the Masters.
Do you think he has a chance to win again?
Sure. I think he always has a chance to win. I think he is definitely a horses for courses guy. I don't think Tiger is ever going to play a regular schedule again. I don't think physically he wants to do it, and I don't think physically he can do it. But could he win at Augusta again? 100%. Could he go over to one of the flatter courses on the rotation of the British Open and win over there? 100%. Can he win at a place like Valhalla, maybe, where ironically the PGA is this summer, or in May? Could he win there, a place that he's won before? Maybe, but I look at those golf courses, the bigger ballparks, as the guys like to call them. I look at those is a little more challenging for him, like the up and down. I don't think he could win at Bethpage anymore. It's too hilly. It's too arduous for him. He could win at Augusta, though. I do believe that he could still win there for sure.
I believe that too, Drew. I mean, you know, you talked about in our first segment, you know, horses for courses, and he loves that golf course, kind of like a Phil Mickelson does. You know, they just seem to up their game there, and I would not be surprised if he's in the hunt again this April.
I wouldn't either. I would never bet against him for sure. I think from the golf, you know, everybody always talks about how well he knows the golf course. Okay, I mean, maybe he does, but you still got to hit it in the middle fairway. You still got to hit it on the greens. You still got to make the putts, right? I think his golf is still as good as anybody's golf. And when he's on, he's as good as anybody. Is he the Tiger of 2000 and 2008? Well, of course he isn't. But that only goes to show you how much better he was than everybody else back then. He's regressed. He's regressed down to now where he's just a great player. But I do think he could still win again. No question about that.
Well, you know what? The weather's going to change here in the next month or so. And, you know, the Masters is right around the corner. You always look forward to Augusta, and just it's so beautiful. I've only had the chance to visit there one time, never played the golf course, obviously, but what a magical place that is. And, you know, it just seems like when springtime comes, it's just fitting that we get to turn on the TV and watch the Masters. It's a great start to the golf season, really, especially here in the Mid-Atlantic. You feel like, hey, it's the Masters, it's golf season here in the Mid-Atlantic.
No doubt. It is the beckoning of spring. I've been very fortunate. I've been down there a dozen times. I've never played it, but I've been there a lot. And I always tell everybody this. If you're a golfer, you have to go. And I know it's
Absolutely.
very, very pricey. It's very expensive if you don't have a ticket. You got to buy one on the secondary market. You have to go see it in person, because when you're there, Bobby, and you know this, when you're there and you walk the golf course and you watch and you see guys practicing and chipping and hitting shots, you really have no idea until you see the golf course how difficult that place is. And when you see scores of 16 under and 18 under winning, it's amazing to me that they can shoot those kind of numbers based on the complexities of the greens. The chipping areas and the greens are so dangerous. And it's not that difficult of a driving golf course. You can kind of hit it everywhere because they don't have much rough, but you've got to be able to get the ball somewhat close to the hole. And it's just not easy to do. And to see them put up those kind of scores is amazing.
It really is. I'll never forget my experience there, walking up 11 fairway, getting to the top. You know, I've seen Amen Corner on TV a million times, right, or whatever. And but to be there, to stand there on the top of that fairway, look down at Amen Corner, it was magical. It was like surreal. It was like a painting. So yeah, I agree with you. If you're a golf fan, if you play the game and you love golf, do yourself a favor. If there's any chance you can get there, just to look at the golf course. You know, I was, you know, you always want to see the players, but I really didn't even care about the players. I was more interested in walking the golf course, looking at the shots that the guys had to hit. I think that's what makes it so special, for sure.
Well, there are some bigger greens on the golf course for sure, but when you're there, you also realize that about 12 of the 18 are like tabletops. It's if anyone watching or listening has ever played Fountainhead, they're like Fountainhead and Hagerstown. They're all like tabletops. They're very, very small, which is why you've got to be a great chipper, got to have a good short game to win there. But there are some bigger greens too. But when you're there on the golf course, you realize how small and narrow the landing areas are and the greens are. It's amazing. I have not been to all the great golf courses in the world by any means, but it's a magical, magical place. It's incredible.
And you start looking at, I pulled up the odds, Drew, and you're looking at the favorites. It's no surprise you've got Rory, you've got Scotty Scheffler, and John Rahm are leading the way. And as the picks, will Rahm repeat now that he's on LIV? That's a great story. Victor Hovland's up there, obviously Brooks Koepka. So, you know, all the big names, but it seems like with the Masters too, there's always that guy that no one's either heard of, or, you know, he's that guy that you root for because he's an underdog that plays well that week. And again, he catches lightning in a bottle. And that's what makes that tournament, I think, special as well.
Well, sure. I mean, you have guys always kind of hovering around after 2 or 3 days. Remember, Smiley Kaufman was leading going into the final round one year. Like, there are always guys hovering around, that it could be a life changer for them. Mike Weir kind of won out of nowhere. I mean, Mike Weir was a nice player, but he won out of nowhere. Trevor Immelman won sort of kind of out of nowhere. Danny Willett.
Yes. Yes.
Here's the thing I would say as we look at it and you try to handicap it, you do need to look at guys who are really, really good shippers and short game guys. That's until Hovland looked like he fixed his short game issues last year. I would have said Augusta's never a place he's going to be able to win because he's not going to be able to chip it well enough. Now it looks like he might have fixed those issues. I think he's a guy to watch for sure. He hasn't necessarily played all that great over the last couple of months, but I don't think any of that matters because the season's really just getting around to getting serious. I really like Minwoo Lee. I think he is a kid that's coming on. People know of him, but he needs a big win. He almost won the Players last year. He needs a big win to kind of establish himself. I think he's a guy to watch there. I love that kid, Aberg, although his 4-putt last week killed me in fantasy golf. But other than that, I love that kid. I think he is going to be – he was a college player, Texas A&M, who burst onto the scene last year at the Ryder Cup. I think he's got a great chance. And I tell you who I really like. I think this might be Koepka's year. He's been there. He's sniffed around. He's played the golf course very well. He is an extraordinarily underrated chipper. I would say right now, if you pressed me on, as we head into February, if you pressed me, I would say Koepka would be my guy. That would be my pick to win. I picked John Rahm, by the way, to win last year. Not that that was any. He was playing great golf. I just kind of thought it was his time, and I think Koepka is one of the most underrated golfers of the last 20 years. I know he's got a little bit of I know his personality can be grating at times. I think he's an incredible athlete. He kind of athletes it around. He doesn't get lessons. He doesn't know much about the golf swing. He's just an incredible athlete. I think he's got a great chance this year.
I tell you what, picking Brooks Koepka in any major is not a bad thing.
Right.
He always shows up. He's a gamer. He really
No
is.
doubt.
You got to take your hat off of that, and he has game for sure.
I would love to see Rory win. Selfishly, I would love to see him win. Just he's been there, done that, been close, couldn't close the door. I like Rory. I'm not a, it's not like I was when I was a Tiger fan when Tiger was in his heyday, but I like Rory. I wouldn't mind seeing Justin Thomas win. I think he's a guy that, if he could get a Masters under his belt, that would give him 3 majors. Maybe that's what gets him, jump started a little. But I really think it's Koepka's year.
All right. Well, moving on to one other topic I'd like to talk about today, and that is one of my favorite topics, the place I call home, and that is Ocean City, Maryland. You can see the skyline in the background, a shot of Lighthouse Sound overlooking Ocean City. It certainly is a beautiful golf course. And, Drew, I know you've had the opportunity to play a number of the courses down at the beach. And for our viewers out there and our listeners, if you haven't visited Ocean City, Maryland, which I can't imagine, you should definitely do that. It's much more than golf. We've got tremendous beaches, a lot of great restaurants and nightlife. So just a great golf destination. I encourage everybody to come out, and just wanted to get your take on some of your experience playing golf at the beach.
Well, we stay every year down on 137th, so I keep the fractured pruning business for a week. They know my name by the end of the week. I love it. I love Ocean City. In another life, I would live in Ocean City. I love it. I love the seasonal aspect of it. I love that you kind of work your tail off for 4 months and then you're able to take a breather. I love Ocean City. I'm 0 for 7, I think, lifetime at Lighthouse, making a par on that par 3. I think I've hit everything there from 8-iron to 5-wood. Whatever number that is, 3 or 4 or 5, whatever that is.
5, yes, it's 5.
I've never made a par there in my life. Funny story about that is I took my son, who now is 16, but last summer he was 15. I took him, we went to Lighthouse, played with one of my kids, Tate Roberts, who works at Lighthouse, who's a Coward Hall golfer, and going to Coastal Carolina, by the way, for the PGM program. And Ethan, I was telling Ethan the whole day as we were riding about this hole, I'm like, this number 5 hole, it's insane. It's crazy. It plays like 170 yards, and you either hit an 8-iron because the wind's at your back, or you hit a 5-wood because it's in your face. And I was talking it up. We got there. The wind was actually at our back. I hit it into the front bunker by the railroad ties. Ethan hit it to 12 feet and almost made birdie. He's like, Dad, I thought you told me this hole was hard. I said, shut up and get in the golf cart.
Yeah, he probably hits a little higher than you, right?
Yeah, right. But a lighthouse is just a remarkable layout. The
Arthur
golf
Hill's
course
design,
is
yes,
just
yes.
such a treat to play. I love Rum Point. I did something, I have to tell you, I did something at Rum Point that I never did before and I had never done after. At Rum Point, maybe 5 years ago, I hit every fairway and every green.
Wow.
I'd never, it's like almost like golf's perfect game, except I didn't make 18 birdies.
That's great. Well, how windy was it that day?
Yeah, windy, but not crazy windy.
So if there's any wind at all, that's when it plays, so
Yeah.
it was flat calm. So that's impressive.
Yeah. So I had a great day there. I love Ocean City golf. I know Bayside's not in Ocean City, but love Bayside. I just love the whole area there. And I think the golf, and because you've been down there forever. Like there used to be 6 courses there. Now there's 20 some or whatever, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think Ocean City golf is so underrated, and there's nothing better than either getting up early and going to play and then getting to the beach at 1, or waiting it out and going at 3:30 in the afternoon and coming back and having a cocktail at 7:30 and the sun sets. I love it. You got me. You're giving me chills here thinking about it.
Well, spring's around the corner and summer's almost here. So you know what? It's great catching up, Drew. I really appreciate your time this morning. Always great catching up, talking some great golf, and we'll close things out for there and appreciate your time.
Anytime. My show on 105.7 is Sundays from 12 to 1, and I'm going to grab you in a couple of weeks and I'll get you on there, and I'll be talking golf there every Sunday. And they let me do it for 2 hours on Masters Sunday. So, that's like a Christmas in April for me. I get to talk golf for 2 hours.
All right. Drew Forrester from Drew's Morning Dish. Again, thanks for your time. We'll see you next time right here on the Endless Golf Podcast. So long, everybody.
The Endless Golf Podcast has been brought to you by Toyota.